Something's watching me. I don't know why I'm even bothering writing this. There's really no point. Nobody who reads this can help me. Really, I don't think anyone can. Maybe this is some last-ditch attempt to have some spotlight before it's all over. I've always liked having eyes on me. Now it feels like there's always too many. So, I'm gonna tell you a story and I'm going to hope to God somebody reads it. Maybe no matter how much I know that I'm not gonna make it, my nature never changes. I fucking hate myself. It started like this. I tripped over 3 steps that led to my front door. Yeah, it was mundane. The thing is, I didn't really catch myself the right way, holding out my hands and landing on my knees. Instead, I completely slipped off the stairs and dove for the bushes next to my front porch. I didn't exactly land on the bushes, but my face crashed straight into the dirt besides it. Pretty embarrassing. But that's not the worst part of my problems. I pulled out of the dirt pretty fast, not wanting my neighbors to see. But then I noticed that my hands wasn't exactly on the floor when I landed. I looked down to see that my hand was in a shoe print rather than the expected level dirt. Funnily enough, I don't remember that many details about the print, just that it was fresh, that the heel part looked like it had been pressed into the ground pretty hard, and my brain was honestly a jumbled mess right now, and this happened a couple months ago, so I think I'm allowed to be a little spare in details. Like how I can't remember every emotion I felt when I saw the single print behind the bushes of my front yard. I do remember the panic, though. Yeah, that was definitely there. I remember that I traced the heel, wondering if the imprint had been too deep because someone had been crouching here. When I crouched a bit farther than that, looking for, well, I don't exactly remember. Probably another footprint. The average person has 2 feet. After all, I didn't find that though. Instead, I found an empty bullet shell, just hidden under the sleeves of leaves. At the time, though, I didn't recognize it as a bullet shell because I've never seen a gun in person before, let alone seen what's inside of them. I pocketed it, though. Then I called my sister because of the whole footprint thing that freaked me out, and she had always been the most rational person in the family. I knew that I could tell her anything and that she would let me know if I was being crazy. One wild, frantic call later, she was driving down the street, probably more concerned than afraid for me. If I'm being honest, I don't think I'd been very calm. Something about the shoe print had gotten to me, even if, at the time, it had only been a bad feeling. Anyways, my sister came not too long after, and I showed her the bullet shell. Still not exactly aware of what it was, she explained to me, and though I tried not to let my unsettled nerves show, it clearly hadn't worked, because she led me back to the house and told me to take the day off. She didn't seem particularly worried about my safety, just my health. My brain jumped to conclusions that she wouldn't ever have considered. She laughed, saying that I could call her if I got overwhelmed and stuff like that. I didn't really plan on taking her up on that offer. I still haven't. That night I couldn't sleep. It was the same with the night after that, and the ones after that, too. You get the idea. I was scared. And sure, I probably had a bit of paranoia, but Once the words bullet had left my sister's mouth, I was consumed in fear. It wouldn't go away. I still haven't, really, which is why I'm writing this whole thing in the first place. How was I ever meant to sleep when every shadow on the wall looked like a menacing gunman in black? Is some kind of leering monster out my window? No, I was destined to stay awake until I found evidence of that thing that was above my head. Some days I would sit by the window still, peering down to see if there was a figure in the bushes, like I'd always expected there was to be. There was nothing ever there, obviously, but on other days I would stay far away from the windows as possible, sure that something would be looking back at me if I ever tried to peek. Sometimes it's easier to not acknowledge the danger, or at least that was my thought process. Yeah, I know. I'm a fucking jackass. But one night, the kind where I did everything but look out the goddamn window, I heard a sound. I'm not entirely sure how to describe the sound through text, but I think that someone who watched an action or a western would recognize the sound. A soft click that led against metal. The thing that I probably wouldn't have heard if the night hadn't been so quiet. Something in me froze at the sound. I didn't know what to do. How really to react to the sound? Part of me wanted to run to the window to look to see what was down there, but it seemed too dangerous, too impossible to even try. And again, maybe I'm an idiot, but at the time I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. Slowly I crouched on the floor, suddenly afraid to be spotted, and I stayed there for a bit, able to hear nothing but my own breathing and rustling of the leaves. Now I know that the rustling could have just been the wind, but I don't think so. I still don't. It sounded like someone shifting underneath a bush. I remember sitting on the hard ground of my second floor just to imagine what they would look like. It just made me more scared, but I couldn't help but imagine. It's my nature. At that night, I kept hearing sounds like that at night time, and I became more wary of looking out my window. There were times where I would hear footsteps every time getting weirdly close. Whoever was there, watching me, had also made it to my front door, and on certain nights I could hear the light tapping on their knuckles against the wood, less like a knock and more like they were testing the strength of the hinges. I didn't exactly stop my peeking though. I only did for a few nights ago, and I saw someone more clearly. And well, I don't know how to describe what I felt the moment I locked eyes with my captor. Captor? Vicious in a way that maybe at least I knew that I wasn't crazy. But really, it was less of a moment and more of a heart attack. The sinking assault figure that was wearing all black, a mask that covered the lower half of its face. Still, I didn't focus on that. Rather, the first thing I noticed were their eyes. They were so bloodshot that the red in them seemed to glow in the dark, and they didn't seem to blink the entire time we met eyes, which for over a minute. The stare was intense. It was frightening in a way that I still don't understand. I don't think I really want to.